They say the most dangerous time in a relationship isn't when you're fighting, it's when you leave. We all like to think that distance equals safety. You move a state away, you change your number, you get a new apartment with a deadbolt and a Ring camera. You tell yourself that the miles on the highway act like a filter, that the bad memories and the bad people can't follow you across state lines. But obsession doesn't care about geography. And while you're busy building a new life, someone else might be busy building a cage. This story isn't about ghosts. It isn't about a monster under the bed. It's about the man who rented the house down the street. It's about the sound of a car engine you thought you'd never hear again. And it's about finding out that for the last week of your life, you were already living inside a trap. You just didn't know it yet. My name is Genevieve. And in the fall of 2024, I found out that a nightmare can sign a lease. To understand why I ended up in Arizona, you have to understand what I was running from in Utah. I'd spent the better part of 2023 in a relationship with a guy named Zakary. On paper, Zach seemed fine, maybe a little intense, maybe a little too interested in where I was every second of the day, but I chalked that up to him being protective. We've all made excuses for red flags because we wanted them to just be quirks, but protective turned into possessive real quick, and possessive turned into, well, let's just say the police got involved. By September of 2023, there were charges. Kidnapping, assault, real heavy stuff. The court system in Utah did what it does. They let him out on pretrial release, but they slapped an ankle monitor on him, a GPS tether. For a while, that black plastic band around his leg was the only thing that let me sleep at night. It was like a magical force field. If he stepped out of line, the alarm would sound, the cops would roll, and I'd be safe. But I couldn't stay in Utah. Every grocery store, every gas station. I felt like I was seeing his truck. I needed a hard reset. So, in late 2024, I packed everything I owned into a sedan and drove 600 miles south to Glendale, Arizona. If you've never been to Glendale, it's basically endless suburbs. Stucco houses, tile roofs, strip malls. It's quiet. It's boring. And that is exactly what I wanted. I wanted boring. I found a nice rental in a quiet neighborhood. I got a job. I started meeting new people. For the first time in a year, I stopped checking my rearview mirror every time I turned a corner. October in Arizona is actually kind of nice. The heat finally breaks. People start putting up Halloween decorations. I remember walking out to my car on the morning of October 25th. The air was crisp. My neighbor was putting up fake spider webs on his bushes. He waved at me, and I waved back. It felt normal. I remember thinking, I made it. I'm finally just a face in the crowd. But looking back now, I realize how fragile that feeling was. I was living in a bubble. I didn't know that 500 miles away, in a house in Payson, Utah, a pair of wire cutters had just snapped through a GPS strap. And I didn't know that a gray passenger car was already on the I-15 south, doing 80 miles an hour, headed straight for my new zip code. The weirdness started small. It was about 3 days before Halloween. I was coming home from work, pulling into my driveway. I have this habit, probably leftover trauma from Utah, where I always scan the street before I get out of the car. There was a car parked 3 houses down, a gray sedan, not a junker, just a generic, boring rental car type of vehicle. I didn't recognize it, but again, it's a neighborhood, people have guests. But as I walked to my front door, I got that feeling. You know the one. The prickly heat on the back of your neck. the sensation that eyes are touching you. I turned around. The street was empty. The windows of the gray sedan were tinted dark. I couldn't see inside. I went inside, locked the door, and told myself I was being paranoid. "You're in Arizona, Jen," I thought. "Zach is in Utah with a bracelet on his leg. You're safe." The next day, things got tangible. I went out to my car to go to the gym. I walked around the back to throw my bag in the trunk, and I noticed something on the bumper. It was a smudge, a clean spot in the dust. Arizona is dusty. Your car gets covered in a fine layer of grit within 24 hours of washing it. But right near the license plate, there was a smudge, like someone had rubbed their thumb against the plastic, or like someone had reached up under the bumper. My stomach dropped. I knelt down and looked under the chassis. I ran my hand along the inside of the frame. Nothing, just dirt and grease. I stood up, shaking my head. "Stop it," I told myself. "You're spiraling." But then came the phone call. It was October 30th. I was in the kitchen making dinner. My phone rang. It was a local Arizona area code. I picked up. "Hello?" Silence. Not dead air. Not a disconnect. Active silence. I could hear breathing. Slow, steady, rhythmic breathing. And in the background, very faintly, I heard a sound that froze my blood. It was the sound of a turn signal. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. The breathing stopped. Then a voice. It was distorted, maybe muffled by a cloth, or maybe just low and raspy. "Nice decorations," the voice said. I dropped the phone. I ran to the window and ripped the blinds open. My neighbor across the street had just put up a giant inflatable pumpkin. The caller wasn't in Utah. The caller was watching my house. I called the police immediately. The Glendale dispatcher was nice, but she gave me the standard speech. "Without a specific threat or a name, there's not much we can do. We'll send a patrol car by." A patrol car did come by about an hour later. They shined a spotlight on the street. The gray sedan was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with all the lights off, peering through the crack in the curtains. Every time a car drove by, I flinched. But the real horror wasn't what I was seeing. It was what I wasn't seeing. I assumed if Zach was here, he'd be sleeping in his car, or staying at a Motel 6 by the highway. I didn't know that he hadn't just come to watch. He had come to move in. Halloween morning, October 31st, 2024. I woke up to my phone blowing up, but it wasn't a prank caller this time. It was the police, but not the Glendale police. It was the Payson Police Department, from Utah. "Ms. Agard," the detective said, "we need you to listen carefully. Zakary Preece has cut his monitor." My knees gave out. I actually sank to the floor in my kitchen. "When?" I asked. "About a week ago," he said. "We raided his place. He's gone. And Genevieve, we found a notepad. It had your address on it. Your new address." The world started spinning. He knew. He knew exactly where I was. "You need to lock your doors," the detective said. "We've contacted Glendale PD. They are on their way to you right now." I hung up and scrambled to check the locks. Front door, back door, windows. I grabbed a kitchen knife, which felt ridiculously small in my hand, and backed into the corner of the living room. 10 minutes later, I saw the lights, blue and red flashing against my living room wall. I peeked out. There were 3 squad cars swarming the street, but they weren't pulling into my driveway. They were surrounding a car parked 2 houses down, the gray sedan. I watched through the window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I saw officers drawing their weapons. I saw them shouting commands. "Driver, put your hands out of the window! Do it now!" I couldn't see the driver. The tint was too dark. For a second, nothing happened. The street was dead silent, just the hum of the police engines. Then, a sound shattered the morning. It sounded like a firecracker or a gunshot. The police swarmed the car. One officer smashed the driver's side window with a baton. They dragged a body out onto the asphalt. It was him. It was Zakary. He was bleeding. He'd tried to end it. He'd put a gun to his own chest when he saw the badges. I watched the paramedics load him into an ambulance. I watched them tape off the street. I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost made me vomit. It's over, I thought. He found me, but they caught him. He's going to jail. I'm safe. I walked out to the police line. An officer came over to me. He looked pale, shaken. "Is he alive?" I asked. "He's in critical condition," the officer said, "but he'll survive." "Did you find a gun?" I asked. "Yeah," the officer said. He looked back at the gray sedan. "We found a gun, and we found some other things." "What other things?" The officer hesitated. "Tracking devices. Looks like he was planning to tag your car." I shivered. That explained the smudge on my bumper. "Well," I said, trying to steady my voice, "at least he was living in his car. He must have been miserable." The officer looked at me. His expression was grim. "Ms. Agard," he said softly. "He wasn't living in his car." I frowned. "What do you mean? Did he have a hotel room?" The officer pulled a set of keys out of an evidence bag. "We found a lease agreement in the glove box," he said, "and a set of house keys." He pointed down the street, not to my house, but to a house about 4 blocks away, a nice, nondescript rental home in the same neighborhood. "He rented a house, Genevieve. He's been living 4 blocks away from you for 5 days." The police executed a search warrant on that rental house that afternoon. They wouldn't let me go near it. They said it was an active crime scene. But later, through the court documents and the attorneys, I found out what was inside. I think about that house every single day. I think about the fact that I probably drove past it on my way to work. I might have even seen the lights on inside. It wasn't a bachelor pad. It wasn't a place to sleep. It was a bunker. In the living room, they found surveillance equipment, monitors. He had cameras set up, but it was the back bedroom that haunts me. They found restraints, heavy-duty zip ties, rope, handcuffs. They found weapons, more than just the gun he had in the car. And they found notes. This wasn't a crime of passion. He didn't come to Arizona to yell at me. He didn't come to key my car. He rented that house because he needed a place to keep me. The detectives told me his plan. It's called instrumental stalking. He was going to wait for the right moment. Maybe when I was coming home from the gym. Maybe when I was taking out the trash. He was going to grab me, and he wasn't going to take me back to Utah. He wasn't going to drive me out into the desert. He was going to take me 4 blocks down the street, to a house he legally rented, to a room he had prepared. He had set up a secondary life. He paid a deposit. He signed utilities. He acted like a normal member of the community, all while building a prison cell for his ex-girlfriend. If the Payson police hadn't called, if that detective hadn't found that notepad, I would have walked into my house on Halloween night, and I probably never would have walked out. Zakary Preece was indicted in February 2025. Attempted kidnapping, stalking. He's sitting in a cell now, waiting for trial. But I don't live in Glendale anymore. I moved again. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I don't have social media. And every time I sign a lease on a new apartment, I don't just check the locks. I check the neighbors. I look at the houses down the street, and I wonder who's renting them. I wonder if the guy unloading boxes is just a guy, or if he's building something. Because the scariest thing about a monster isn't that they look scary. It's that they look like everyone else. They drive gray sedans. They wave at you when they're putting up decorations. And sometimes they have the keys to the house right next door.